Hello, and welcome to another Cloud Podcast, a podcast designed to bring you stories from the smartest minds in IT, operations, and business, and learn how they're using cloud technology to improve business and the customer experience. All right, well, welcome to another Cloud Podcast. I'm so excited to have Karen Durenberger from Total Expert on the podcast today. She is the VP of Customer Support. And Karen, great having you on. Thanks for showing up.
Thank you so much, Alex, for having me. I'm super excited to be chatting with you and looking forward to it. It's an interesting topic and lots to talk about. So yeah, it's going to be great. Thank you.
Yeah, there's never a shortage of things to talk about in customer support, customer experience. It seems to be the buzzword of the day now. 10 years ago,
Yes.
A lot of it was account management. Now it's customer success and customer experience. And so before we dive into all of that, I'd like to hear a little bit about what you guys do at Total Expert and just your roadmap on how you got there and how your career progressed to where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been a Total Expert it was just 2 years ago on May 1st. So just hit my 2-year anniversary. Total Expert provides software. So we're a SaaS company that provides software to the mortgage and financial institutions. So some would call it a CRM, some call it a marketing tool. It's a way to build your business, communicate with your users, your customers, and we are growing rapidly. We probably doubled or more in size since I got here. So fast growth, which is super exciting. And, for my career, I started off years ago, first at very large companies like Honeywell, Bayer, C.H. Robinson, so more into the larger corporations. And it was a great way to start my career. But as I grew in my career, I decided to kind of try out the more medium-sized companies. Really like that. But in the last 10, 15 years, I've been really focused on startups and really honed in on support and just customer focus areas where what you do every day, day in and day out, just really matters, right? Mm-hmm. Yesterday, we celebrated hitting our Q1 goals at Total Expert, and we met all of the goals that we set out for our go-to-market team. And I was talking to the support team this morning about how critical our role is in meeting those goals. It's so easy as a support team to not understand that you play a part in reaching those goals, because we don't get to sign a piece of paper that says I just closed a deal for $1 million, right? You don't get to do that. You can't hold that piece of paper and feel good about it. We do all of those things behind the scenes that allow our customers to love our product and to want to grow with our product. And the goals that we met in Q1 were largely in part of the growth of our existing customers. And the support team has a huge place in that. And so we spent a lot of time this morning talking about how important it is for us to take a minute and be grateful and to understand the role that we play in that success, because it's so easy to forget, right? So my heart is really now in the area of managing people that are day-to-day interacting with customers, making sure that we're providing just an amazing experience so that they love our product. And when they do have a problem, they can reach out to us and we can solve it for them. And that's where my heart is. That's what I love to do.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's a lot to unpack there, right? Where you talk about a high growth company, doubling in size over 2 years and to retain customers during that, right? And to have a good system in place to where a lot of these hyper growth companies, they lose track of what got them there, or they lose that boutique customers white glove kind of feel to their support. How do you manage within that the last 2 years to maintain that success in the customer support world?
It's not an easy thing to do, but what's been really helpful is, as a company, Total Expert is very focused on the success of the customer. And you can't be successful as an organization unless the focus is across all departments. I've worked in a lot of companies that talk about being customer focused, but there's a big difference between talking about it and believing and acting on it, right? And so one of the reasons I came to Total Expert was I was convinced that they didn't just talk about it. They lived and breathed the customer experience. And it didn't hurt that I had some people that I had worked with previously that were already here and could
Okay.
tell me that, yes, that's the way it
Yeah.
is, right? So, do we do it right all the time? Of course not, right? Companies always fail and we learn from it and we grow from it. But, for me, it's just making sure that all the team members on the support team understand that they are a piece of the puzzle and that as an organization, we are striving to give the customer the best experience possible. That doesn't mean that you always say yes, because sometimes the right answer is no, right?
Yeah.
And that's not always easy in support. You always want to say yes, and you always want to do it. And when you're selling, you always want to say yes. And when you're in product, you always want to say yes. But if you're going to truly grow at the kind of speed at which we're growing, you have to learn to say no at the right time so that you can manage your growth and manage it in the direction that you're controlling and not letting the outside sources control you. And that's not an easy thing for a startup to do, right?
No. Yeah.
It's something that we have struggled with, but we're getting better at. And I think it's one of the main reasons why we've grown at the rate that we have. So
I think that's a great, I guess you can call it, highlight for your executive team to be able to have that focus and to be able not to, you want to say yes to everything when you're in high growth startup mode.
the
Salespeople are going to be like, yes, we can do that. Yes, we can do that. Bring the developers in, we can create that.
Right.
But at some point that doesn't scale. Right. And then you have to start saying no to certain things, but hopefully you're at a point at the company where you have the revenue, you can start saying no to really focus in on where your perfect niche is and where you can support the clients the best.
I agree. And Alec, I think you would agree that customers don't necessarily want you to always say yes. They want you to be able to deliver something, right? And if you always say yes, but you can't deliver it, it doesn't matter, right? So be careful about what you're saying yes to. Be careful that it's the right direction for the company long term so that you're actually building a product that's not only scalable, but that your customer can grow with. Because if you're turning yourself into a custom dev shop as a SaaS company,
right,
you're never going to see the growth that you want, right? You can't, because now your dev team is just a custom dev shop and they're doing anything the customer wants. But then your final product, you go 2-3 years down the road and the product isn't something that you can scale with. And that's a big danger that I think a lot of younger startup companies fall into, that trap of wanting so bad to please that first handful of customers that they have because they're important, right? They got you to where you are. But at some point you have to balance that with deciding what's the future of this company and then saying no at the right time and getting customers to understand that no is the right and good answer. And not only for us, but for your future as well. And that's kind of where we're at as a company. And it's really been fun to see us transition into that level of a maturity. And it's been I've seen a lot of change in 2 years. So it's one of the reasons I like startups, working at Honeywell and those larger companies. It was great. And it was a great experience for me to work at those larger companies, but it's not the same, right? You don't have that sense of growth and challenge of trying to figure out, how do I scale a team to double in size in potentially a year or two? How do I hire the right employees? How do I make sure I know what kind of support team we need to build to keep our customers happy? Because every industry is different, right?
Absolutely.
And the type of support team you build at one company might not be the right type of support team for another, different company. So understanding who your customer is, understanding what kind of support expectations they have, and then hiring the right people, combination of people to make sure that you're supporting customers in the right way. There's no end to challenges and fun that comes with that.
Hopefully there are good challenges that are solvable. I think, it's really interesting. I love the career path because you talk about Honeywell and these big enterprise organizations where you've learned so much. You have such a great knowledge base from experience, right? It's all like what you know. Now you get to take that to the startup world and you're at a company that's in hyper growth. And what I love about the startup companies, and even like in my small little business, is that as it grows and as you try to get more laser focused, the team grows. Everyone matures with the company. Have you seen that be part, like with your team and others in the organization, as they have to mature with the company?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I have conversations with my team all the time about how you have to stay on your toes and you have to continue to grow as an individual to keep up with what's happening in the company.
Mm-hmm.
The person that you were 2 years ago, 3 years ago, you don't want to be that person that doesn't fit anymore, right?
Mm-hmm.
But that's a little bit scary because sometimes companies outgrow their people and sometimes people outgrow the company. I mean, it can go both ways, right?
Yeah.
If you don't want the company to outgrow you, that means you have to be ultra sensitive and careful about how the company is growing and do whatever you have to do to keep up. And sometimes that's really hard, right? And so, I mean, I'll be honest, we have seen people leave the company, and it happens at every startup.
Mm-hmm.
Either the company outgrows them or they outgrow the company. A lot of different reasons why it happens, right? And sometimes people say to me, well, why are we bringing people in from the outside? We should be growing our own people
Mm-hmm.
from inside. I agree with that. And there needs to be career path and growth for people within the company. But at different stages in a startup's growth, sometimes you have to bring in from someone from the outside who's been there and done that. Because if you haven't been there and done that and you don't know, I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And you can't take a team and double it in size if you have no idea what that entails.
Yeah.
And you don't know how to search for the right tools or the right skill set. Sometimes it takes people from the outside that have been there and done that. And it's hard for people to accept that sometimes, but it's all a part of a startup and a growth. And I think, you know, at the same time, I've really been able to balance the support team with internal growth. Good. So we've been able to grow people within the team. I've been able to create additional positions within the support team. So there's a career path within the team. But I've also seen people move from support into QA, into customer success, into other areas of the company because they bring a wealth of knowledge about the product and our customers that can be a huge benefit to other departments. So, you know, as we talk about leadership, I see that as one of my job's most important things is creating career paths for people on my team, helping them understand their strengths and then helping them explore different options and seeing them get promoted into other positions. There's nothing that makes me happier than that, right? And people are like, oh, but that's so much work for you because now you have to turn around and train more people. And I'm like, yep, I train them and others steal them, right? But that's not a bad thing, right? As a support department, I tell my team all the time, we are an amazing training ground for people in other departments in this company. And we need to embrace that and not fight against it, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's in a lot of ways, it's fulfilling for one, because you're helping others succeed. It's that whole mentor-mentee relationship, right? Like if you're a seasoned person in your career, you've been at these big organizations, now you can take this recent college grad and say, hey, there's some great career paths here for you to take. Like this is a great, you know, you're on the front lines, as you know, so to speak, as in customer support, taking phone calls, talking with angry customers, but you'll learn so much that sometimes even the executive level doesn't understand what's going on down at the very bottom, like face to face with these customers. So to have that, you know, that ability to take that with you into other parts of the organization is so important. But you mentioned, you know, you talked about leadership a lot. So go a little bit more into like how you develop your employees and how you just look at leadership in general.
Sure. You know, as I was thinking about having this conversation with you, I was thinking about leadership a little bit. And I thought to myself, who in the world am I to be talking about leadership? Right? All these people that have written so many wonderful books and have wonderful seminars and we have PhDs and, all respected in the world.
Yes.
And who am I to be talking about leadership? But then, it's such a big topic. And I think you could talk days and days and days about leadership. But the reality with leadership is there's so much to it that you really have to stop and think about what are the key things about leadership that are important to me, and then how do I display those to my team day in and day out, right? So I was thinking about that the other day, and I kind of came up with 3 things that are super important to me as I think about leadership. One is trust, one is empathy, and one is belief. So those 3 are, to me, kind of the cornerstone of leadership. So I can kind of explain to you what I mean by some of them. Trust, I think you hear a lot of people talk about trust, right? Trust is trust. You've got to have trust on your team. You have to have trust across a company. It's a lot of different ways you can build trust. Not everyone's good at it. They think they are, but not that many people are. And I build trust a couple of ways, right? When I first start in a job, I spend my first 30, 60 days doing nothing but listening and watching. I'm not going to go in and tell someone what they're doing wrong and how to change it. Okay. I have to first learn all of the good things that the team is doing and all the things they're doing right before I can tell them how we can make it better. Right. So I spend a lot of time just listening and watching. That alone builds an enormous amount of trust with the team, because they realize that, oh, this person isn't going to come in and just tell us everything we're doing wrong. They're actually listening to what we're saying. So I think that's super important. One thing that's a little bit controversial, and some people don't agree with me, is I think one of the really important things about building trust is that we have to be human and authentic with our team, right? Some people say, oh no, you're a good leader. You put on this facade all the time of being a good leader. I don't believe that, right? Everybody knows you're human. So why pretend you're not? Because you don't gain any trust with people if they see you attempting to be this super person all the time, because they know it's not real, right? So is it okay to have a bad day? Yep, depends on how you handle yourself, of course. It's okay for your team to see that you've had bad days too, or bad moments. It's okay for the team to see you fail. That's hard for people, right?
Yeah, the ego.
I mean, I fail all the time and I don't hide it with my team. I'm very transparent about things I might say that I wish I'd said different, things that I did, or ways in which I behaved, which I wish I'd done differently, the way that I reacted to something that I wish I could take back and do differently, or things that I just plain failed at. I made a bad decision, right? We all do it. So why pretend we don't? And if we can be authentic with our team and they can see us being human, what that allows is they can then learn how to take a failure and fix it, how to admit it, how to embrace it, how to learn from it, right? And to me, that builds more trust than trying to be the superhuman that everyone else can't keep up with. It's exhausting to try to be that.
Yeah.
Right?
To be the actor all day long and try to put this persona out, because you're, a lot of times it even goes back to insecurities, right? Where you have these really brash personalities that hide behind that gruffness, where anyone, pushes up against what I say, shame on them, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't, in my entire career of having so many different bosses and watching so many quote leaders, and in my opinion, I've maybe had a handful of bosses my entire career that I truly thought were good leaders. And I've had a lot of bosses. Right? But those are some of the things I learned, right? I didn't respect bosses that weren't authentic and human, because eventually I didn't trust what they were doing or what they were saying, because I wasn't really sure if what was coming out of their mouth was actually true or not, right? So that to me is really important. I mean, when someone does something great on your team, if you're a good leader, you are making sure that they get all the credit in the world for what they did, right? But if someone on your team makes a mistake, that's on you.
Yeah.
You don't ever throw a team member under the bus when they make a mistake, right? But how often do you see leaders taking credit for the great things their team is doing? But then when someone makes a mistake, they're first to point the finger and throw them under the bus. It should be the opposite, right? We should be making sure that the people, when they're doing good things, are getting all the credit in the world where they deserve it. But when the team fails, that's on the leader. I mean, that's on me. And I'm very clear with my team that that's the case. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, you see the example all the time in sports where coaches will fall on the sword, you know, and ultimately as they should, because they're the leaders of the leader of the team. And it's like something went wrong at some point that can always point back to the coach or to that boss or to, you know, to that leader, and absolutely give the team credit when they do well, because they executed on what the leader's teaching them and trying to get them to do. So I think, you know, overarching all three of those, the trust, empathy, and belief, I think builds so much respect. And when people respect you as a boss, they'll do things, they'll go above and beyond.
Oh, absolutely. I have had employees say to me so many times, I would do anything for you because I know you'll do anything for me. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a really simple statement to make, but it speaks volumes about the level of trust that they have. And as a result of the trust, the willingness that they have to go beyond expectations when needed, right? Because they want to please, they want to do a good job. They're willing to go over and above and maybe even do something uncomfortable because they've seen you do it for them.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about in my book, right? That to me is huge. So let's talk about empathy a little bit, because I've had some really interesting conversations with people. Empathy, right?
Empathy is an interesting one because can you learn it? Is it, and you know, I think some personalities have inherent empathy. It's an interesting one. So I'd love to hear you dive into that.
I think there are some people in this world, no matter how hard they try, they'll never be empathetic. It's just not a part of who they are. I think they can try to become more sensitive to it, but I think you're either born with a certain sense of ability to be empathetic or you're not, right? And I think if you're born with that ability, you can definitely grow it and learn to manage it and really use it in purposeful, good ways. You can also use empathy in destructive ways. So as a leader, empathy is an interesting one because to me, empathy is balancing accountability and empathy, right? And people say, well, no, you got to have one or the other. You're either holding people accountable or you're empathetic. I'm like, no. The two can go together and need to go together, right? Because if you're just empathetic all the time and you just you always have a million excuses for why people can't do things, that's destructive. But if all you know how to do is hold people accountable in unfair ways without having any sense of empathy, that's just as destructive, right? So if you're going to hold people accountable, the first thing you have to do is make sure that they have clear idea of what's expected of them. If you're going to hold people accountable, but you haven't set clear expectations, shame on you as a leader, right? Because how can they be held accountable when they don't know what they're being held accountable to? And it's not just about verbalizing what they're being held accountable to. It's making sure that they have the right tools and the means by which to accomplish those goals, right? And as a leader, that's your job to make that happen, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, if you have no empathy, you lose that human side, and that's where you start to erode that trust and belief and everything else, right? So for me, the challenge every day is balancing holding people accountable, but being very empathetic with just life and work and stress and people's emotions. We're human.
Yeah.
Right? And when people see that you are sensitive and understanding and empathetic of them, it's amazing how their behavior changes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's a huge balance. So I had a conversation the other day with someone who was telling me about an individual that they work with. And this individual is a leader in their organization, has a big team of people working under him. And he made the statement the other day that I purposely do not invest time in getting to know my staff because it makes firing them harder.
That's a lot to unpack. Hey,
when she first told me that, I was like, I didn't have any words. My brain just was like spinning, right? Because there's so many things about that statement that are wrong, right?
Yes. There's some growth opportunities for that person.
Oh my goodness. I mean, and the sad thing is there are a lot of leaders and organizations like that.
Mm.
But what that statement tells me is, number one, I care more about myself than anyone else. Mm-hmm. Loud and clear. That's what that statement says. It also says, I'm not going to invest any of my time getting to know you because I don't care about your career. I care about what you're going to do for me. Mm-hmm. And if I have to fire you one day, I want to make sure it's as painless as possible. So if I don't get to know you, then it's easier to fire you.
Yeah.
Right? There are so many things wrong with that statement that I had to just like think about it for a couple of days. Right? I really did.
It probably took you back a little bit. And one, how many people are they firing? I mean,
I know.
Usually people either quit or get promoted or move somewhere else in the org. But like if you're firing that much, then because there's some other issues going on.
You do. I mean, I worked with someone years ago who literally told me, I enjoy firing people.
Oh my goodness.
And I was like, I don't know how any human being can enjoy firing anyone, right?
Yeah.
They're a person. They have bills. They have a family. They have feelings.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they literally said, I enjoy it. I get a rush from firing people. I'm like, yeah, you need to get out of this job.
Yeah.
That's where, no sense of accountability, no sense of empathy. Come on, people. I mean, talk about lack of leadership skills. Yeah. But the scary thing to me is these are the types of people companies continue to promote into leadership positions. Now, to me, that's not that person's fault. That's a fault of the company.
Do you think it has to do with just the way people look at leadership, and they've always seen the command and control style from the mid-century all the way up through now, right? Where it's you have to be strong and you have to be disciplined and you have to crack the whip. And I think that still permeates culture. Yes. To where I
do think it does. And I think it's also because we have this misguided idea that if someone is good at their present job, then they're going to be a good leader. And it's so not true, right? So, hey, so-and-so is a really good customer success manager. So let's make them a manager of a team of customer success managers. Or so-and-so is a really good developer. So let's make them the director of this development team. Just because you're good at your present job, the best on the team, doesn't mean you're the best pick to manage or lead that team. Yeah. It's a whole different skill set. But I think most companies, they just don't think that way. They don't value good leaders enough to take the time to really figure out if someone's going to be the right leader or not.
I see it all the time. And, we work with a lot of companies and their sales departments and whatnot. Yeah. And you see, we're going to take the best sales rep and throw them as a sales manager because clearly they can recreate whatever they were as a salesperson to their team. And
not always.
It very rarely works. And usually it's the mediocre salesperson that's a great manager because they're more, whatever skills or whatever it is.
It's true. I mean, I look at most of the support teams that I've managed. Most of the people on my team today and in other teams have been more technical than I am.
Mm.
I'm not the most technical person on the team, but I don't need to be the most technical person on the team.
Yep.
We may be supporting a product and I need to have a team of technical people, but I don't need to be the most technical person on the team to be able to lead the team in the right way. It's a different skill set. But I think a lot of organizations just, for some reason, they miss that piece. Maybe because the people that are picking who the next leaders are bad leaders themselves, so they don't know what to look for.
It just snowballs. So one of the questions I have now, because we talked about these leadership qualities, and now it's, well, how do you hire for that? How do you hire for the people that you want? You want someone that has empathy. You want someone that, has the, that you can build trust with, or that seems trustworthy. So it's like, how do you wrap that into the hiring process and the interview process and to find
when I hire for the support team, it's really important to me that I hire people with the right heart, right? You got to be customer focused. You have to have empathy. You have to have patience.
Yeah.
You have to be technical enough to be able to support the product, but your heart and your thought process has to be in the right place, right? Yeah. When you're in support, people don't call you because they're calling you to tell you how happy they are with something. They're calling because something's wrong, right? So you're constantly dealing with people who are unhappy about something, something's broken, something's not working right, they can't figure something out, and they're impatient. And so you have to have the right personality. But when I'm hiring for the team, whether I'm looking for a leader on the team or a tier 1 support person, doesn't matter. I am looking for someone with patience, empathy, and drive. And sometimes it's hard to find the combination of those things. I can teach the technical. If you have the technical mindset, right, I can teach you the product and I can teach you the technical troubleshooting skill set. But I can't teach you to be empathetic if you don't have an empathetic bone in your body. I can't, right? I also try really hard to bring a lot of diversity to my team. And I don't mean diversity in the standard format of diversity. I'm talking about diversity in skill set, diversity in thought process, diversity in background, because I want the team to challenge each other every day. Because when you build a team of a lot of the same people with the same strengths and the same weaknesses and the same personalities, you get stale really fast and it gets boring. And I want people to challenge each other every day. It's okay to disagree. I want you to disagree. I want people to challenge me. So I'm going to hire people that I think are better than me. I'm not scared of that. I'm not afraid of bringing people in that are better than me. If they take over my job someday, I'm okay with that. But a lot of people will hire people that are never going to be a threat to them because that's more comfortable.
Yeah. But
that's wrong, because if you hire people that are better than you, your team is just going to be that much better.
Right.
And if you're threatened by that, well, then, that's a whole different issue.
Yeah. Right? It's very narrow-minded, right? To think
very narrow-minded. Do you care about the growth of your team and how well you can support your customers? Or do you care more about your pride and you looking good to somebody else? I care about how we support our customers. And if that means bringing in the best people that might make me look bad, I'm okay with that.
Well, usually I can't imagine that you bring in a rock star person. They're going to look to you, say, wow, you found a gem here in Sally or Joe, because they're crushing it. We have a spot for them to get promoted somewhere else. Typically you're not seeing them replace your job. Very rarely.
That's how you need to look at it, right? Instead of looking at it as a threat, look at it as something that's really positive for the company.
Yeah.
And don't worry about the rest, right? Well, just you gotta let your pride and all that just go.
Yeah.
Right.
I was gonna say, so one of our guests at his name's Brett Fraser over at Sunbasket. They do delivery. He was talking about how they help create empathy for their support team is that they had them
Yep.
go through the whole process of what it's like to get a basket delivered, and they inserted problems into that experiment. So people had a
Love
great
it.
experience. Some people had a horrible experience, but they got to see what customers have a chance to go through. How, if any, or how do you create that? It's trickier with your product set because it's not a B2C, but how can you help create empathy for the support?
Yeah, it's a little trickier, but we're in the mortgage and banking industry. So most of us have a bank account somewhere.
Mhm.
Most of us, not everyone, but many of us have a mortgage. So we've been through the process of trying to get a loan and closing on a house and all the ins and outs and craziness of that. And you have bank accounts and checking accounts and savings accounts, and then you've got your bank reaching out to you, trying to get you to give you a loan or a credit card or all these other services, right? So everyone really in our company has a taste of what our customers are doing. It's not a thing, I mean, you don't get a new mortgage every day, but you've most likely been through the process. And most of us have had a bad experience somewhere along the way in that process, right? But we do sometimes take people and send them out on a test.
Yep.
Go open up an account here, do this, do that. And we literally put them through the process and let them experience what it's like when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you can help build empathy that way. But for me, it's just listening to the person,
Mm-hmm.
understanding that, a lot of the people that we are dealing with are loan officers, right?
Okay.
Loan officers don't get paid if they don't close on loans.
Mm-hmm.
So I remind my team all the time, if the customer seems stressed or it seems like it's super urgent and you're wondering why it seems so urgent, remember, never forget, they're trying to feed their family. And if something goes wrong and they miss out on this opportunity, they're missing out on a paycheck. So this is not just a basket of apples that doesn't show up on the door, right? This is a paycheck. This is their livelihood.
Yeah.
So when you stop and you think about it that way, it becomes a little bit more. And then we always remind each other, remember the last time you called your cable company and what a horrible experience
It's always
you
the
had?
cable company.
I know, it's always the cable company. I should have picked something else. It's terrible.
No, it's good though, because we
always a good
relate.
example. Or, the last time your internet went down, or the last time you tried to have your groceries delivered and you got somebody else's groceries. I mean, everyone's got examples of terrible experiences, right? Just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? Just
100%.
listen. I think so often we try to solve the problem before we stop and just listen.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do that, you just annoy the customer more. Just give them a chance to just get it out, right? Say what they need to say. I always say to the team, just let them barf all over you. It's okay.
Yeah.
Right? Because once they're done, then they'll take a deep breath and you'll know when it's the opportunity in the right moment for you to say, okay, now let's try to figure out how we can help, how we can get you to a better place. But if you interrupt them when they're in the middle of trying to tell you how miserable they are, they're not going to hear anything you say.
Right. They'll just get more upset.
They just get more upset. So, we help each other. We listen to, we quality check tickets. We coach around it. We talk about different scenarios. But you just got to hire the right people, because if you hire the right people, they're already good at that. Yeah. Empathy thing.
Yeah. I think there's so much psychology.
Don't hire the right people. It's tough.
Yeah. And there's just so much psychology around it's communication, right? And if you hire a great communicator, like 90% of the battle's done, right? Because they know how to work with people-oriented people. So
I also put go ahead.
No, I was gonna say the last bullet on your leadership, your 3 tiers of leadership would be the belief side.
Belief. Yes.
I don't want us to forget about that one and see like kind of
talk about belief a little bit. People would say, well, what do you mean by belief? For me, it's believing in your people.
Mhm.
right? Building your people up, helping them see their talents before they even recognize it in themselves,
Mhm.
right? So we talked a little bit earlier about giving them opportunities to shine so that other departments can see the goodness in them, so that when an opening comes up in another department, they're like, pluck them right out of the
Yep.
support team, right? I love it when that happens.
Yeah.
Part of it is because I key them up into certain meetings and certain events where they can shine and show their
Yep.
stuff. And that's how one of the people on the tier 1 team actually got a QA position. Good for him. He just absolutely blew everyone away. And they're like, we need him on our team. And I'm like, whoa, hold on.
Give me some time.
Yeah. But one of the earliest lessons I learned really early in my career, I was probably early 20s. I mean, literally second job in my career,
Yeah.
probably 21 years old, no idea who I was, no idea what my talents were, no idea if I even had any talents, shy, quiet, reserved. I just wanted to crawl in a hole and no one to see me, right? And, you know, I told you earlier, there are probably a handful of people that I consider to be really good leaders that I've had as bosses over the years. And my boss at that time was one of those people. I was very fortunate to have him as a boss that early in my career.
Yeah.
And I was thinking back the other day about what he did for me back then. And it took me many years to realize what he had done and the impact that it had on my life. So he used to say things to me like, hey, Karen, when you're a manager, XYZ. Hey, Karen, when you get into management, ABC. Hey, Karen. First couple of times he said it, I kind of snickered and laughed and said, I'm never going to manage people. I mean, I couldn't imagine managing people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
21 years old, shy, quiet, not a chance. But he saw something in me that I did not see in myself yet. And he kept saying it for 3 years. He would keep saying, hey, Karen, when you're in management, think about this. Hey, Karen, when you interview people someday and you're in charge of a team, if you hire the right person 50% of the time, remember, you'll be doing good. And I said, oh, that can't be true, right?
Yeah.
But he kept saying it. And I never really thought about it that much. But later on in my career, I look back at that experience and I realize how much that shaped my psyche and the
Yes.
way that I viewed myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even realize it was happening, right? I mean, I owe a lot to him.
Yeah. It's like the
right?
best self-talk. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I wish that he was still alive. I mean, he used to still send me Christmas cards every year until he passed away a couple of years ago. We stayed in touch for years and years and years and years and years.
Yeah.
But what I learned from that is what you say and the words that you use matters, right?
Absolutely.
It matters so much. And if you want to be a good leader, you better be very mindful of what you're saying, how you're saying it, and the words that you're using, because you can either use your words to tear someone down, or you can use your words to build them up in ways that you don't even realize you're doing, right? And that's where people's careers sometimes start and take off, is because of things that you continued to say and feed into them, where they started to believe in themselves. And I have seen many people throughout my career do things that they came back later and said to me, I had no idea I was good at that. I had no idea that I had that capability, or I had no idea that I could do that. I had no idea I could get up in front of a group of people and speak, right? I had no idea I could manage people. And it's because people don't always see their own strengths.
Yeah.
And as a leader, it's your job to help them see that.
Yeah. I see that. I see that so much in just parenting. I mean,
oh, it's so true in parenting.
Goodness, you know, especially, you know, speaking into them. Oh, when you go to college, or when you become a lawyer, or, you know, kind of those things like, oh yeah, it helps them dream big, right? Because
Yes,
And it's so
absolutely.
true that you see the strengths that they don't see. We all have our own insecurities, and we see ourselves through our reality, but parents and others see you completely differently through their reality, which is typically
Absolutely. And
positive. Yeah.
it's true at home and it's true at work. You know, you don't ever want to talk about your employees like they're your kids, but there are a lot of parallels
Yeah.
to the responsibility that you have as a leader towards the people that you have on your team.
Hmm.
And I take that responsibility really seriously, right? And that doesn't mean that I'm not going to be authentic. That doesn't mean that I'm not going to try not to let them see that I fail or have a bad day or say something I wish I'd said different.
Hmm.
Because as a parent, you also don't have to be perfect in front of your children. They have to learn how to fight by seeing you fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
I mean, so it's okay for them to see that relationships aren't perfect all the time, but that
Yeah.
you can work it out and talk it out,
Hmm.
right? Same with your employees,
Yeah. And we
right?
talked about accountability, like all of it, like
Yeah,
you can have empathy. They made a mistake, but there's still accountability that comes with it. So you're going to, be grounded for the day or whatever it might be. And it's
yeah,
employees, it might
yeah.
be, hey, like this was a mistake, but here's how we're going to fix it. Here's how to be accountable, and part of it's them just learning, like raising their hand. Hey, I made a mistake. That's taking ownership and
Yes.
accountability right there.
Well, and you can very quickly tell how much trust you've built with the team with how quickly and willing people are to come forth when they make a mistake.
And
Because
kids too.
if you don't have a whole lot of trust, people are going to like sweep it under the rug and hope you don't
Yep.
notice, right?
Yep.
But when you can get your team to the point where they made a mistake and they recognize it and they come to you immediately and say, this is what I did. I need help fixing it. What do we do next? Because they know that you're going to take that opportunity and how we're going to fix it together. And I'm not going to throw you under the bus in front of anyone else or upper management. I'm going to take the weight of this mistake.
Yep.
And then we're going to learn from it.
Yeah.
Right. And when people are at that comfort level, you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't mean that they'll just make mistakes right and left because they know you're going to forgive them. That's not true.
Yeah.
I mean, they still are horrified that they made the mistake because part of that trust in relationship is that they want to do a good job.
Right.
They care about doing a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're going to have mistakes made by people that don't care way more often because they don't care.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We see it all the time.
Care, right? And then they're not going to tell you about it because they don't care.
Yeah, exactly. And you want to those are the people you want to fire. Right.
Those are the people you don't want to get to know.
This time has absolutely flown by, and we could talk another hour about this stuff, but I want to be respectful of your time for the day and get us through the week. But thank you so much for being on this podcast. I love that we just took a deep dive into leadership because it goes over no matter what career path you're on, whether it's customer service, customer success, CEOs. It's a very good subject to touch on. And I think you brought some great, and I love the three bullets that you have on trust, empathy, and belief. So thank you so much for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, that wraps up the show for today. Thanks for joining. And don't forget to join us next week as we bring another guest in to talk about the trends around cloud contact center and customer experience. Also, you can find us at adleradvisors.com, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcast platform. We'll see you next week on another Cloud Podcast.